Chapter 3. Bones slowed from a jog to a walk as the rocky hills came into view. The orange ball of the late afternoon sun hung low on the western horizon. Colored the same dirty reddish-brown as the rest of the landscape, the hills cast long shadows across the cactus-dotted landscape. It would have made a nice painting if he was into that sort of thing. Having nothing better to do, Bones had gone for a run with this dark spot on the horizon as his target. The hills had looked taller from a distance, and he had hoped maybe they would offer some decent climbing, but up close they weren't all that impressive. It was only the flat lie of the surrounding land that lent this place the illusion of height. When he reached the base of the closest hill, he stopped and took a swig of water. Tepid as it was still refreshing in this dry climate. He probably should have brought more than a liter, but he hadn't planned on running this far. Not for the first time, he wondered how the hell he was going to kill time out here in this empty patch of dirt. He took a moment to walk along the base of the hills, examining them with casual disinterest. Though none of them were more than 80 feet tall, the edges were steep. Wind and perhaps a little bit of rain had scoured their surfaces clean, leaving bare stone with only the occasional clump of weeds stubbornly clinging to its surface, like patches of beard missed during a hurried shave. He soon came upon a heap of tumbled-down rock. A quick inspection told him that changes in temperature had caused the rocky hills above to crack and large portions to shear off. Here the face was almost perpendicular in spots. Looks like a good place for a free climb. He took another swallow of water, capped the bottle, and stowed it in the shade under some loose rocks. He would want the rest of it for his trek back to town. He took a minute to choose his way up. What he was about to do was foolish, he knew. Free climbing was dangerous, and to do it without a partner even more so. But Bones was reckless even at the best of times. Boredom tended to turn it up a notch or three. When he was finally satisfied that he had selected a route that was sufficiently challenging but unlikely to kill him, he began his ascent. It felt good to work muscles that had gone largely unused since he'd begun his cross-country drive. He wasn't one for sitting around for very long, and his body seemed to be chastising him for a couple of sedentary days. Twinges of pain danced across his back and shoulders as he made his way upward. Higher and higher he climbed, his fingers and the toes of his shoes picking out every crack and crevice. Spider-like, he clambered up the first 50 feet before he hit a dead end. That was all right. It only added to the challenge. He backtracked a few feet, mentally plotted a new route, and moved to his left until he could resume his ascent. He was almost at the top when things got ugly. At that moment, one toehold and one handhold chose to give way simultaneously. He cursed as he felt himself slipping down the hill. He held on tight with one hand, his fingers digging into the split rock. His shoulder wrenched and hot pain burned along the length of his arm. If he had torn his rotator cuff, he was going to be pissed. "Look on the bright side," he grumbled. "At least no one's around to see you dangling here like a—" The roar of an engine and the crunch of tires on rocky ground made a liar of him. He steadied himself, finding new hand and footholds, and looked back to see who was coming. A battered jeep drew a dusty line across the parched earth as it approached. Figuring he didn't have any friends in this neck of the woods, and knowing this was public land and therefore he couldn't be trespassing on anyone's private property, he turned and resumed his climb. The rumble of the jeep grew louder, bringing with it the twang of country music. Bones closed his eyes and winced. "Don't be a redneck. Please don't be a redneck." Down below, the jeep scraped to a halt, the music dying as the engine choked into silence. A door slammed shut. "What are you doing up there?" The voice was male and slightly high-pitched, with a light touch of accent on the O's that was typical of so many New Mexicans. "Performance art," Bones called down without looking. "I accept tips. Just put them under a rock so they don't blow away." "You need to come down from there." The speaker sounded uncertain. "It's cool, I've done this before. Now why don't you leave me alone before you make me fall?" Bones was about 10 feet short of the summit. Here the rock face angled outward a few degrees, making for a challenging finish. "I'm a sheriff's deputy, and I'm telling you to come down from there right now." Bones finally looked down. The man was a thick-set Latino dressed in blue jeans, cowboy boots, and a checked shirt. His left hand rested on an automatic pistol holstered on his hip. "If you really are a deputy, that means you're not a fed, and this is BLM land." The deputy grunted a mirthless laugh. "That will probably hold up in court," he admitted. "Of course, you might sit in jail for a long time before you come to trial. We're really slow with paperwork." Bones took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I'm climbing a freaking hill on public land. Why do you care? It's for your own safety. In that case, it's probably better if I climb these last few feet to the top instead of coming all the way back down. I'll chill out up here and you can send a chopper to pick me up. The deputy ignored that. I could just shoot you, but you don't want that, do you? I've already called the sheriff, he added. That sealed it. It was all a big pile of crap, but Bones didn't need the hassle. Who the hell knew what small-town justice looked like around here? All right, I'm coming down. He took his sweet time, not because he feared falling, but because he wanted to make the deputy, if that's really what the guy was, wait as long as possible. When he finally reached the ground, he took a moment to brush himself off and wipe his bloody fingertips on the sandy ground before turning around. At about 5'8", the deputy stood nearly a foot shorter than Bones, and he took an involuntary step backward as the big Cherokee approached him. How did you get here? The deputy asked. Aliens dropped me off in their spaceship. He flinched at that, probably not accustomed to being spoken to in this way. He squeezed the grip of his pistol and then released it. You got a car around here, a motorcycle or something? Bones shook his head. The deputy waited, but he got no more of a response. Bones had plenty of time to kill until his truck was ready, and spending it making this idiot miserable was at least better entertainment than staring at the walls of his motel room. Let the man stew in his own juices for a while. He could do this all day. Tell you what, the deputy finally said. Leave now and we'll forget this ever happened. I'll tell the sheriff you cooperated. Like I said, it's just about safety. Bones looked up at the sky, pretending to consider the deputy's words. Finally, he nodded once. Whatever, dude. He retrieved his water bottle, took a drink, mostly to make the deputy wait a little longer, and headed back toward town. As he strode past the Jeep, he noticed for the first time someone sitting in the passenger seat. It was Matthew, wannabe author and Mary's boyfriend. He inclined his head and pointed at Matthew to let him know he'd been spotted. Now that, he said to himself as he turned away, is interesting. Chapter 4. The knock at the door came again, harder this time. Bones turned off the shower, grabbed a towel, and opened the bathroom door. Hold on a minute. He pushed his long hair back out of his face, wrapped the towel around his waist, and still dripping, headed to the door. A thin trail of water followed him across the threadbare carpet. When he got to the door, he peered out through the security peephole and smiled. Marisol stood there, gazing intently at the door as if she could see right through it. This is a surprise, he said as he unlocked the door and opened it. Come on in. This isn't a social call, Her eyes widened when she saw his state of undress. Do you always answer the door naked? Only when somebody keeps pounding on the door when I'm trying to shower. Besides, I'm not naked, I'm wearing a towel. That's a hand towel. She pointedly looked the other way. Bones looked down and realized that in his hurry he had indeed grabbed a towel that barely covered his hips and pelvis. First peek is free. Anything more than that, you've got to buy me dinner. Could you just get dressed? I'm in a hurry. Mary turned her back on him and stood, arms crossed, tapping her foot while he pulled on shorts and a t-shirt. You don't mind if I go commando, do you? She let out an exasperated sigh. Even that was cute, Bones noticed. Oh my God, she said. Are you always like this? Give me time, I only get better. He dropped down on the corner of the bed, eliciting a strained squeal from the aging box springs. You can turn around now. I'm as decent as I ever get. Mary took a quick glance back to make sure he was in fact dressed, before she turned all the way around. What were you doing out on Alcone Rock? She asked without preamble. Oh, is that what it's called? Just tell me. She took a deep breath and bit her lip. Please? It's cool. I'm into climbing. I went for a run, saw the, Halcone Rock, and thought I'd give it a go. Just like that, you saw rock and decided to scale it? That's sort of how rock climbing works. Do you climb? Mary shook her head. Matthew thinks, she hesitated, that you went out there just to mess with him. That would be a trick since I didn't know anyone was going to be out there. I might be devilishly handsome and wickedly charming, but I'm not psychic. Mary considered this for a quiet moment. And of all places, you just happened to wander out there? Dude, I've never been here before. I went for a run to kill time and that's where I ended up. What's so special about that place? Nothing, she said much too fast. It's just that Matthew was out there, and I was afraid you might have gone out there to start something with him." "Why would I do that?" Bones knew the answer, and he suspected she did too, but he wanted to hear her say it. "No reason, really. It's just that he sometimes rubs people the wrong way. I saw you two talking earlier, and I thought maybe you might have, I don't know, taken a dislike to him. I hated that idiot before I even met him, and you know why." Mary hung her head. He softened his tone. "Why do you put up with him? You're awesome, and he's a tool." Mary giggled at that. "You don't know me at all. I'm not that great." Bones rose and in 2 steps closed the distance between them. He reached out to brush the hair back from her bruised eye, but she flinched and took a step backward. "Sorry," he said. "Listen, I know relationships are complicated, but this is the simplest thing in the world. You need to get away from this guy for your own safety. Hell, get out of this town. If you need my help, I'm here. Whatever it takes." Mary was right. He didn't know her, but he couldn't stand to see a person stuck in a situation like hers. He had to at least offer. "Thank you," she whispered. "But you don't know what you're offering. Matthew's dangerous, and it's not just him." "I promise you I faced 1,000,000 times worse." He almost laughed. Mary wouldn't believe half of the things he'd done in his life. "I should go," she said, taking another step back. "It's a small town, and someone might notice me hanging around here." "Let them talk. Maybe your boyfriend would be stupid enough to make an issue of it." Mary shook her head. "Will you just promise me you'll stay away from Halcone Rock?" "I will if you'll tell me why." A curtain seemed to draw down over her eyes. That request was obviously a non-starter. She cocked her head and frowned. "Did you really run all the way out there and then climb the rock?" "Almost. I still had about 10 feet to go when Deputy Dipshit and your fellow showed up." Mary smiled. "Deputy Dipshit. I'll have to remember that one." She fell silent. They stood gazing at one another, Mary not crossing the threshold, but not making a move to leave either. Is this what they call an uncomfortable silence? "I'm not uncomfortable, but I think you'd be a lot more comfortable if you came inside and closed the door. We can just talk." She twitched, as if she were about to take a step toward him, but froze. "You have a lot of scars." I peeked a little bit. "I was a Navy SEAL. I've been through some stuff." "I'll bet you've got some stories to tell." The eye contact was gone. "Plenty. Want to hear a few?" "Yeah," she said. "Maybe tomorrow at lunchtime." She turned and hurried away without a goodbye. Bones moved to the doorway and watched her walk to her car, get in and drive away. When she was gone, he closed the door, grabbed his cell phone, and did a quick search for Halcone Rock. The results made him whistle. "Holy crap. I think I need to go back for another look." Chapter 5. No one was about when Bones slipped out of his motel room and headed down the street. He kept to the darkest shadows, which wasn't difficult since there were no streetlights, at least none that worked. The dim glow of the neon light and window of the Blue Corn Grill cast a pool of light on the ground, and Bones found himself longing for the cool blue waters of the Gulf of Mexico. That or the giant swimming pool at Mandalay Bay. It wasn't particular. High above, a dusting of stars twinkled in the clear night sky. The dim glowing band of the Milky Way galaxy lay just above the horizon. Queimadra might be a hole in the wall, but the night sky was spectacular. You didn't see skies like this back east. Humming the eagle's song, Peaceful, Easy Feeling, Bones crossed the street and struck out across the open desert. When he was well clear of town, he turned on his phone and started reading one of the articles he had found on Halcone Rock. It was a piece from the Santa Fe Sun. He did a double take when he saw the name of the author of the piece. Amanda Shores, what are the odds? Smiling at pleasant memories, he began to read. Subterranean slaughter? For more than a half-century, New Mexico and aliens have gone hand in hand in the national consciousness. From stories of battles at secret alien bases to perhaps the most notorious story of them all, the Roswell incident. When someone thinks of aliens, their thoughts almost always turn to New Mexico. Roswell, New Mexico has understandably received the most attention in this regard. From the well-known museum to the space-themed cafes, all the way down to the street lamps shaped like the heads of visitors from beyond, the city had cultivated the alien connection and parlayed it into a modest but respectable tourist trade, drawing both the casual visitor and the dedicated researcher. Roswell, however, is far from the first community in this state to be associated with alien contact. While so-called UFO experts focus their attentions on the most recent and renowned stories, reports of alien contact in the region date back to the indigenous peoples who made their homes here long before contact with European explorers. Reports of strange lights in the sky, artistic representations of strange beings and crafts, and even direct contact with extraterrestrials are common to the lore of tribes of the Southwest and beyond. One such story survives in Apache lore. According to the legend, a group of warriors were descended upon during the night by a handful of alien-looking beings. The men were short, with lean gray bodies and bulbous heads, and carried flashing spears full of fire. Though Apache are widely regarded as the finest warriors among the southwestern tribes, masters of camouflage and ambush, the dozen or more warriors were helpless against the handful of strange beings. Only 2 of the original party managed to escape. While most people would consider this nothing more than a story, one elder claims to have in his possession proof of the encounter. According to his account, one surviving warrior fought hand-to-hand with one of the attackers, managed to wound it with his knife, and came away holding something that belonged to the strange visitor. This artifact has allegedly been handed down for hundreds of years and has never been shown to the public. Whether it exists at all, who can say? An interesting wrinkle to the story of this incident, which allegedly took place at the foot of Halcone Rock near Cape Madra, is that the aliens came not from the sky, but up from beneath the earth. The Apache saw neither lights in the sky nor strange crafts of any kind. Depending on which version of the story one believes, the aliens either descended from the top of the rock formation or came up from somewhere underneath it. Few, if any, researchers have investigated the story. Those who have tried report being turned away by members of the local sheriff's department. A Santa Fe Sun reporter received similar treatment when attempting to visit Halcone Rock, despite the monument's location on public land. The deputy at the scene cited safety concerns, but otherwise declined to comment. Gemadra-based author and self-described UFO skeptic Matthew Jameson dismissed the legend as mere fancy. "The locals don't take the story seriously," said Jameson. "I promise you no one has seen any aliens wandering around here. Spreading this sort of story is nothing more than an excuse to set up a t-shirt stand. We'll leave that to our friends in Roswell. Did aliens once live beneath the red rocks of eastern New Mexico? Do they live there still? Perhaps we'll never know." Bones closed the browser window and turned off his phone to preserve the battery. There wasn't much there to go on, but Matthew Jameson was obviously the same Matthew he'd encountered earlier. Mary's boyfriend. The man had some sort of interest in Halcone Rock, and if Bones didn't miss his guess, the man believed there was something there, and Matthew wanted to be the first to find it. Add in the fact that the local authorities consistently patrolled and chased away visitors from a location that wasn't strictly theirs to control access to, and the whole thing stank like a men's locker room. Eager to see what he could find, Bones set out a steady jog. Soon the dark shape of the rock formation loomed against the starlit horizon. Bones grinned. This time he would make it to the top and see what Matthew was hiding up there.